I found myself being invited to court three times, at least three times over the next few weeks and months. And I was yesterday in court to make a statutory declaration. I'd been stopped nearly a year ago by two traffic officers for allegedly not having a seatbelt on, and when I questioned them and I told them that I'm sort of questioning the law and I'm doing a social experiment, they got very upset. Then they looked in my car and my son was there and didn't have a booster seat on, even though he had his seatbelt on. And so I said, well, I don't really want to take any paperwork. At the time I was playing around with that idea. So what they did was they reported me, and I just received a fine without going to court. So I had to swear a statutory declaration, and they gave me a new time to go to court to plead guilty and not guilty. And at the time I realised that by not taking the paperwork I was depriving myself of the opportunity to take a fixed penalty, which is going to be less than what happened in court, because it was ended up with £525 fine for doing those two terrible crimes. Anyway, I'm back in court on the 24th of March, and I'd be really interested in anybody who's into alternative thinking about the law. Be really interested to hear what you had to say. I'm very confused about the whole freeman thing, but I'm really open to suggestions, because these are opportunities, I think, for me and for anybody else to try things out in court, because they're minor things. And I've got two other opportunities in the next few months, so I'd really appreciate anybody contacting me with ideas about what I could do. And whilst I was in court, or should I say whilst I was in this rather lucrative business what could I call it? But yeah, business. I went to sue. They call it any more business in court, don't they? So whilst I was in there, I thought I'd have a little chat with the people that were around, that were in the court, and I spoke to 5 different people. 2 of them were young women who were in there for evading the fare on a bus. I think one of them was in there for swearing as a result of this. She claimed she made a mistake. Anyway, so she was dragged through the court, and 2 of them, and then a third person. The couple of guys were sitting there, and I went up to them and I said, "What's really going on in here?" And they said, "Well, it's not justice, that's for sure." And I said, "Why do you say that?" And they said, "Well, their story," and again, it's their story. Yeah, that's all. Their story is that they were in their flat, and they had a friend round, and they were drunk, and they had an argument, and the friend walked out the house, and on the way home called the police up and said that this guy who was in court had threatened him with a samurai sword. So the next thing this guy knows is there's a knock on his door, and it's the police, and they say, "Can we come in?" And he says, "Yes, come in," and he invites them in, and the minute they get in, they pounce on him, drag him out of the flat, push him to the ground, 4 of them. One of them comes into the flat, sees 3 samurai swords that are kind of ornamental swords on the wall, takes one down, says, "Oh, this is the one, that's it." And he's in court for originally for threatening the guy with a samurai sword, but the guy didn't turn up in court, so that one's going to be dropped. So he's in court for resisting arrest. That's what he's in court for, and he is seriously considering, on the advice of the solicitor, pleading guilty, because the way the system works is that if you plead guilty, you get less of a sentence than if you plead not guilty. So it's up to you. You can either plead not guilty, come back on another day, have to take another day off work, risk taking on this whole system, yeah, and then end up with a 3-month prison sentence for resisting arrest, even though he claims he was just pounced on and he's got all the bruises to show it. Or being up against these police officers who all collaborate and being found guilty and going to prison for up to 3 months. So that was his story. The next story was a man who was in there being accused of calling someone an effing Jew. He claims he didn't do it, but even so, he's being dragged to court for essentially insulting someone, which I think is absolutely bonkers. But anyway, and then that was the fourth guy, and the fifth guy was a guy perhaps in his 60s with a limp. His story was that he'd got into a bit of a thing with the woman who dealt with his claims for benefits. To cut a long story short, he claims she made a pass at him. He resisted the pass, and then she kind of turned on him, and he then said to her at some stage, "You wouldn't like it if I knew your home and address, would you?" And started contacting you, something like that. She reported him to the police for harassment, and they turned around at this house and knocked on the door and said, "Can we come in?" And he said no, which they took to mean yes. And then his leg is really badly injured from a motorbike accident, and he said, "Please don't bend the leg back." But of course they completely bent the leg back, and he had to go to hospital, and he had to his months and months, and I don't know if he's recovered from it, but there was loads of medical problems from it all. And but he was in court for assaulting a police officer, and and he was pleading not guilty for that and guilty for the harassment of saying that to the social worker. So those are the stories that I got from court, and that's what's going on in your courts. And I guess from this, I would really recommend people, I've said this before, it's really, for me, it's absolutely fascinating. I recommend people, young and old, if you've got any time during the week, just pop into your local magistrate's court and watch what's going and speak to the people around. It's a good opportunity to speak to police officers that are in the court. They've got nothing to do. There's lawyers hanging around, and just ask them what's going on. The best question that I know of that works at opening people up is just to go into a court, say you're doing a social experiment, and you're just asking people in the court system, what's really going on in here? Just ask them that, and it's a really good question to open them up. And so watch what goes on in court. Speak to the people outside that are waiting. It's theatre. It's fascinating. I highly recommend it, and it's educational. I will leave you with that. Have a great day.